By the way, TrueFire are running a 10-week boot camp. So it's a weekly video overview, in-depth video lesson, tiered homework assignments, community feedback, discussion, live Zoom session, and all of this for 10 weeks. Yeah, get involved. That's free, and you know, I'm a fan of the TrueFire stuff anyway. Don't know how many of you guys watching this are folks who are gigging full-time or have done that at any point, like making money being a musician or being a full-time musician. I'd love to know if you're in those ranks. So if you want to leave a comment for folks to like have a look at, you know, have you been a full-time guitarist or whatever other instrument you play, have you tried to do it for a living? Because this is a video, I was kind of chatting to someone last night who said that basically the last time that they tried to do this sort of thing was in 1989, which happens to be when I was born. And I have some feelings on this, as I kind of in 2015 was when I first decided, basically thanks to Paddy from that pedal show, plays the bass on there, who I saw the other night. Good to see you, Paddy. He got me my first paid gigs like within the function scene. Before that, I'd done like a very small amount of like just, you know, pub sort of gigs and duo sort of gigs, just playing acoustic with a couple of friends. And also I was signed to a Warner publishing deal, and we did a few gigs, like, you know, playing to rooms of like 2,000 people for fuel money. But anyway, in this video I wanted to kind of do like a bit of a chat about what kind of sucks about trying to make a living as a full-time musician, in the hope that maybe it helps someone else, and maybe get like a few tips about what it's actually like in the UK. It might be different for other folks, but what we can do, and you know, some realistic stuff. The main thing for me that is a real challenge within the music industry is that there is work available that you can pick up. So the most lucrative work in the UK generally is going to be, and I guess this might be the same for the rest of the world as well, but it's going to be playing function gigs, playing weddings and playing corporate gigs. And this is basically how I've made most of the money that I made in live music, is through wedding gigs, function gigs, and even touring musicians who are playing with like the big acts that you've seen around the world. When they're not on tour, they're doing these gigs as well. Now, as you'd expect, this is a very seasonal sort of trade, and not only that, but it's mostly focused around sort of Fridays, Saturdays, maybe Sundays. So there are some things that come along with this for the ride. So one of the main problems is that from sort of April, May to about November, maybe a little bit before, you'll be quite busy. And you might actually be struggling to fit in the amount of learning that you have to do, especially if you're taking on lots and lots of different gigs. And at this time of year, it is really quite a challenge if you're doing lots of gigs with lots of different people. Obviously, like as a social life, you'll find that your other friends are probably doing things on Fridays or Saturday nights where you probably are going to be at a gig and you're probably going to be playing with whoever you're in a band with. This is a nice thing as well. You get to like know and have lots of other friends who are musicians. So that's basically my peer group or peer friends. Most of the friends that I have, I've played in bands with. I know from playing in bands with them. It's kind of a nice thing, but it's just one of those things to bear in mind as well. For a lot of the year, or even for quite a lot of your week, you don't have like a set thing to do necessarily. You're going to be learning songs is the biggest challenge, especially around the summer season. But there's no one that's going to sit and tell you, you know, you need to learn that song for that set list. And other people in your band might just learn it on the day. It's a whole thing, and there's a big mixture of like work ethics and stuff like that you'll find. But the main thing as well is that between November, December, January, February, March, these months are going to be quite a struggle as a musician, because basically you earned quite a lot of money through the summer, and then once the New Year's and the Christmas parties are done, January and February and March tend to be pretty quiet and pretty bleak. And not only that, but at the end of January you get a tax bill where if you're self-employed you then have to sort of pay ahead a year's tax as well every so often. So that's a nice surprise that in your bleakest months you also have your biggest tax bill. So those are some of the real huge challenges, and what I find that can sort of mitigate these. So back when I was only relying on gig income, the things that saved me at this sort of time of year would be having midweek gigs, and Paddy was a huge part in this as well. So basically there was a jam night that would run regularly at a place called the Apple and Parrot in Torquay. And that eventually devolved into an open mic night, but I would do that with my wife. We'd run this open mic night. And at that time, having £50 a week, I think that was what it was each, even that small amount of money can really help when there's not really any other good gigs coming through. So that would be one of my main sort of things to try and work around the season, and you know that it's going to be the same every single year. So try and find something to do in January, February and March. So if you're absolutely certain that it has to be music, then something like a duo. If you can sing and play guitar, going out just yourself singing and playing guitar, I think is a little bit easier to find work, especially when budgets at this time of year are tightened up a bit. If you could do that, I've never done that, but I think that'd be a really, really good way to supplement your income at that time. But doing things like bar gigs, the quiet sort of stuff that is still happening in January, February and March is really where you can supplement your income. And if you can get regular work doing that, then you're probably going to survive those months a bit better. The other thing is that I would say that don't be afraid of doing a real job for a bit, whatever that entails. If I look back, there was a big part of my income as well that came from my wife's boss. She ran the marketing company, and she would need copy written, so I'd write articles for her. And that's again like one of those things which is like it fits in quite nicely with the rest of my job. And when I needed money, I could sit down and I could, you know that each week I'd have an article or two or a blog or two to write for this, and that really helped again. So don't be afraid, like real jobs don't have to take away from what you're doing if you're trying to be a full-time musician necessarily, as long as they're not interfering in terms of like happening at the times when you've got gigs, then I would absolutely not be afraid of, trying to get a job doing something if that's possible. There's never been a more bollocks statement said that those that can't do teach. Like Robin Ford teaches, he can do, yeah? Tim Lurch teaches, he can do. Jonathan Kreisberg can really do, and he teaches. It's absolutely not the case that those that can't do teach. So if you are a guitarist, there are people looking to learn guitar from people like you. So I think this is a real way to really straighten out and balance your income as a musician. Not that I've ever done it, but you know, people that I know that do teach, David Beebe, lots of folks. It can be a thing that takes over. And so actually I have a friend down here who plays jazz and stuff, David Jones. So he was always saying like, oh, I'm envious of you being able to sort of just make a living through gigging. But at the same time, I imagine my income was far less than him at the time, because he had a music teaching job as well, which just basically straightens out your income. So I think that would be another area. Like if you can do a few private lessons and build that. The other thing that people do, I think, is try and get into schools, in which case that then becomes a bit more like a full-time job, and that could potentially detract from your other stuff. The last thing that I never did, but that I'm recognizing you might need to do, is that basically, so I've been gigging in this part of the world here in Devon, where there aren't that many gigs, for like 10 years now, and you kind of quickly start to see, I say quickly, it's taken a decade, I definitely see it now, but I guess lockdown was when I kind of changed direction in a lot of ways anyway, and where things like doing this talking to camera thing sort of started to take over from the gigs as being a source of income. Basically find the ceiling of where you're at. And this is a thing that I've got friends that I talk to. It's like the people that you're gigging with are potentially going to lead to other opportunities. But if you stay in the same place for absolutely ages, you'll find that it just seems like things are pretty stagnant in terms of like, where is the upward sort of situation. I think living in a bigger city might be the way to break out of that. So that's something also worth bearing in mind, which is not something that I've done and not something that I think I'd be brave to do, but where there is opportunities, maybe that's where, if you're wanting to sort of keep going in the upward direction, then maybe you need to move to where those opportunities are. So in the UK, that would be London, right? Or closer to London. Because if you're not in London, I think it starts to stagnate wherever you are, right? The things that happen are happening, and it's all cyclical. But anyway, that's kind of my thought on that. Like, save up towards a goal of moving to somewhere, thinking that you want to continue upwards within the gigging scene. Then what I did, staying in the same place, is not going to work in terms of people aren't necessarily going to notice you in Devon playing in your bedroom, right? Unless you're very lucky. But they might notice you if you're in and around London, and that's where these people are looking for players and looking to hire people like you, I presume. Maybe that's what you have to do. Yeah, some thoughts on what it's like to be a guitarist and what's challenging about it. And also, if anyone wanted some tips, yeah, you know, just get a real job. Yeah, by the time you've done it for sort of 10 years or so, I think you start to realise, yeah, what it is. For my money, I really enjoy gigging. I really appreciate it. And I think that's also what doing a normal job can sort of teach you as well. It's that you know, working in an office is working in an office, working in a supermarket is working in a supermarket. Playing guitar for a living is in some ways a lot of fun, but you know, you're not going to have a retirement package. You're not getting holidays paid. It is going to be challenging around January, February and March. There are some real things to bear in mind. Not only that, but you can also do it alongside a real job and get most of the fun out of it. You know, there's plenty of people that are doing real jobs as well as playing in a band on the weekend. It's not an either-or choice, I guess, is my point. Just see where it takes you. Out of your bedroom, hopefully. See you in a bit.